All right, here we go, everybody. Here's a little sesh to help everyone transition a private lesson student from one department to the next. What I mean by that is oftentimes you'll be teaching a voice student or a piano student or a drum student for a year or two, and then all of a sudden the parent will come to you and say, "Hey, we were wondering, do you think that Oscar could take voice lessons? He's been asking about singing. Do you teach voice lessons?" So, this is all about how to help you transition your private lesson student from one department to the next and just give you the language necessary to be able to actually talk to the parent. So, step one, though, before you get in there, is you got to ask yourself, why is the student unhappy? And why are the parents coming to you in the first place? There's a key question, rather, sorry, that you got to first ask. Is this a question of trust? Is this all about trust? Or is this about transition? In other words, have you built up enough trust with this family that they're coming to you with a really valid request? Or are they, in which case, it is all about transitioning from one department to the next? Or are they coming to you with a question because it's a reactive question? In other words, they don't really understand what's happening in their lessons, so they're just reaching out for the next shiny object, guitar lessons or drum lessons or whatever else their child asks them about or happens to ask them about while they're walking down the streets of the BK. So, the way you figure out if it's a question about trust, you have to kind of do a self-audit as a teacher. You have to say, okay, let me ask myself a few questions first to see if I've established a triangle of trust. So the triangle of trust is, of course, the student, that's up top, the unhappy student, the confused parent, and then over in the lower left, you have the you have the BMF teacher who just goes on teaching the way they think they should teach, but of course they don't actually have a communication, open lines of communication happening between the parent and the student. So a busted triangle of trust kind of looks like this. So, question you want to ask yourself is, when you're auditing your triangle of trust and trying to figure out if you have a good, strong one or whether it's kind of broken like this, is number one, have you clearly shared the Brooklyn Music Factory lesson architecture? What I mean by that is, do you have a simple and clear way of describing to the mom or the dad what the 5-minute warm-up is all about? What is the purpose of that warm-up? Do they even know that there's a 5-minute warm-up that starts every single lesson with their student? Number two, skills and drills. What exactly does that mean? What is the purpose of skills and drills? This is really the instrument-focused point of the lesson. Do the parents know that they have a really deep dive into the instrument in this area of the lesson? Number three, blam games, which are truly the foundation of everything we do at BMF, because they play, they're game-based, number one, they keep the lesson super fun, and number two, their one purpose is to give the student the tools they need in order to be able to successfully connect on a gig. So, which brings me to number four, do the parents understand what the gig song jam tracks are all about? Do they think that, the Dropbox, which you ask them if they're using, is just yet another technology tool that is annoying to them that they don't really want to download and figure out how to use? Do they understand that the gig song jams are all about getting this student closer to our purpose for being, which is connecting with other musicians on their upcoming gig? Okay, so the next question you have to ask yourself is, have you clearly outlined the BMF journey? In other words, do the parents even understand that you're thinking about this student and where they need to be in 3 years, 5 years, and 7 years? That you actually have a vision for this student and how they can really successfully grow as a musician at the Brooklyn Music Factory. So ways that you can kind of do a self-audit and help yourself understand exactly what to communicate when it comes to the journey is, have you talked about leveling at the Brooklyn Music Factory with these parents? Do they understand what it means to be a beginning piano student with you, and when you'll transition them to intermediate, and when when they will eventually become an advanced student at the Brooklyn Music Factory, playing on advanced gigs, and what that looks like and what that feels like. Number two, are you clearly envisioning how gigs will evolve for this student, and do the parents understand the value of gigs, and that's really our main touch point over that 7 to 10 year journey with the student. Number three, again, touching on the BLAM games. These are so crucial for families that really succeed at BMF and embrace our journey and purpose and mission. They really understand and value the BLAM games. They see BLAM badges and stickers on the home rock binder and think, that's awesome. My student is really getting something out of this. And finally, number four, are you clear in how you measure success? Right? We measure success in a very simple way. How many joyful gigs our students play where they connect with other musicians? It's about the joy factor, and it's about connecting. Okay, so let's say you've done all that. You feel like that is crystal clear. You've got a great relationship with the family, and yet they still think it's time, and you also think it's time to transition to another instrument. Solid. You gotta follow a clear transition plan. What that means is, number one, choosing the right instrument, because it ain't always gonna be the drums. Every single private lesson student on the planet loves the drums. They love hand drums, they love drum set. They will always want to play the drums. So, got to be careful not to just because your student says, I want to study drums, that automatically playing the drum set and signing up for private lessons in our drum department is exactly the right choice. So let's go through a quick cheat sheet on each department. Number one, let's look at the drum department. So the ideal age for drummers, our drum students, is 6 and up. So if you've got a 4 or 5 year old student and they're like, I want to take drum lessons, don't send them to the drum department. It is, however, a great starter instrument. If you got a 6 or 7 or 8 year old who wants to move to the drums, it's an awesome instrument because the barrier to entry is so low. You just need a stick and you just need to hit something. And then the key reminder here, I love this because this is all about just little phrases you can share with parents to make them feel more comfortable with the idea of transitioning. The key reminder with the drum department is oftentimes parents do not feel like the drum set is a valid choice for study. Of course, we love our drum department and we see the drums as equally valid to any other instrument you would study. But one way I help the parents is I say to them, you know what, you got to remember the lesson architecture is the exact same in the drum department as it is in the piano department. They'll still play BLAM games every single lesson, so they're not going to be only on the drum set. They're going to be going over to the keyboard, playing wait a second. They're going to be working on learning how to read notes, transcribe notes, all those great things. Okay, so let's move to the guitar department. Ideal age for a guitar student is 7 and up. If you've got a 6-year-old piano student, do not send them over to guitar lessons. Have them wait until they turn 7 and say, let's wait another year and then let's transition to guitar if it's still the right choice then. It's not a great starter instrument. It's confusing, it's difficult, it hurts your fingers when you first start. It's kind of a pain. So we love piano as a great starter instrument. We don't love guitar as a great starter instrument, at least not at the Brooklyn Music Factory. And then a key reminder here, when you do have a child moving over to the guitar department, is you can share how amazing our beginning BMF guitar book is. It's got tons of gig songs in it. It teaches the students to read chords, read rhythms, read notes and pitches, and it oftentimes takes 2 to 3 years for our beginning guitarists to get all the way through that book and crush it. Okay, how about let's say you've got a voice student that wants to switch to piano, or a drum student who says they want piano lessons. Well, piano department is a great starter department for anyone. So we call it the ideal age is 5 and up. We really do think it's the best first instrument to start on for a whole host of reasons. Not the least of which is it's just the architecture of the instrument is so simple to understand. Any 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old can find a group of 2 black keys and a group of 3 black keys and get playing a song within the first couple weeks. The key reminder here is that we love to have every student start in mini keys. So if you, for some reason, are run across a parent who's talking about their 4-year-old who wants to take voice lessons or even piano lessons, you say, you know what? The best starting point is in our mini keys program for 4-year-olds, and then they'll move on to private lessons. Voice, the vocal department, the ideal age here, we believe, is 8 and up. We've had the most success in our vocal department when we have students about age 8 and on up. It's also a great add-on post-piano lessons. So if you get a student that's been taking piano for 2-3 years and they say all of a sudden they want to sing, well, it's a stellar move because we actually offer a customized piano plus voice option. So they don't work as much on sight reading and that kind of thing with piano, but they do work on how to accompany themselves on the piano while they're also learning the beginning foundation of voice. So that's a super popular option. Okay, so the next step in your transition, so there's 4 steps here. The first is to follow a clear transition plan and choose the right instrument or the right department. The second is to find the best BMF faculty fit. So what I mean by that is you first figure out what department they're going in. Secondly, you start thinking about personality of the faculty members within the department. And what I mean by that is that some BMF faculty members will be very comfortable with younger musicians. Some are more comfortable with older musicians. Some are much more comfortable with very shy musicians that have difficulty in social situations. Other faculty members are really good with overly active, super excited students. So you want to think about the right personality fit for that department. And then the last thing you want to think about is where are their strengths and weaknesses as a faculty member. So in every department we have faculty members that are much stronger with younger students, much stronger with middle students, intermediate, and much stronger with advanced students. So you want to ask yourself, and if you don't know the answer, just go to the department head and say, hey, I have a student who wants to switch to drums or piano or voice. Can you recommend a good faculty member? This student is kind of shy and is only 7. And they'll tell you the answer. Okay, the third thing you want to do is figure out the ideal time to transition. This is actually one of the easiest questions for you. Number 1, we transition generally in February or September, so the beginning of the school year or after our slew of gigs in February. And number 2, you always want to try to end strong, end with a gig. If you're going to transition your student out of your department and into another, well, celebrate that transition. It's not a letdown, it's a celebration, right? So, do a great gig and then transition to the new department. The fourth thing that you got to make sure you do to make sure that the transition is super smooth is follow through on your communication. And this is really easy. It's a single email where you send it to Jessica, registration department, and you CC the parent, and you include basic information. Who you think would be a great faculty choice in the new department, the reason why this student is transitioning out of your department, and then the best time for this person to transition into the new department. That's it. If you send that email out, the parent will thank you graciously for sharing all of those great thoughts and information, and they will coordinate with Jessica and look to see what scheduling options there are. You don't have to worry about scheduling at all. You just have to do your job, which is assessing the best choices for that student. Okay, so finally, let's talk about key transition language. These are just phrases I find myself using all the time when parents ask. Because believe me, parents ask all the time if they can move their drum student to vocal lessons or their voice student to piano lessons. So first, BMF has the advantage of encouraging our musicians to transition from one instrument to another while keeping a really consistent lesson experience. That's a phrase I use all the time. Or let's say I've chosen a great new faculty member. I'll say, Nick is a wonderful choice. And the coolest part for Oscar is that he will totally recognize the feel of the lesson. It's a very easy switch for our students usually. And then these last two, you can read them on your own, but there they are. So good luck with transitioning, and we will feel free to reach out to me, Nate at Brooklyn Music Factory, or Ben at BrooklynMusicFactory.com. You got any questions? Nate or Ben will hook you up.